What if your success wasn't just about working harder, but working with surgical precision? What if the true secret to peak performance, personally and professionally, wasn't hustle, but scientific mastery of time, task, and thought? Let me ask you this. Are you tired of inefficiency draining your potential? Of seeing your energy scattered across pointless effort? Then what you're about to hear will rebuild your mental operating system from the ground up. Today, we dive deep into Shop Management by Frederick Taylor, a foundational work that didn't just change how factories operate, revolutionized productivity for the entire modern world. And now, it's your turn. In this episode, you'll discover the hidden power of scientific management to maximize output with minimum effort, why most people operate like outdated machines, and how you can upgrade your thinking, how to systematize success so results become predictable and unstoppable. And that's not all. At the end of this episode, you'll face a targeted knowledge check, designed to not only lock in your learning but ignite a sharper, more strategic mind. Plus, we've got a powerful surprise that could radically shift how you operate, forever. So, buckle in, because this isn't just a podcast, it's the blueprint for high-performance transformation. Let's break through.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your curiosity, grab the sources you've sent over, and really dig in to pull out the core knowledge for you.
That's right. And today we're looking at shop management specifically through the lens of Frederick Taylor, based on the materials you provided.
Yeah, some really foundational stuff here.
Our mission basically is to unpack Taylor's ideas. What problems did he see? How did he think industrial work should really be managed? And what's the historical impact?
Exactly. We've got a lot to cover from these sources.
Yeah.
The old ways of managing pay systems like day work, piecework.
That whole soldiering concept.
Right, and time studies, task management, functional foreman, which sounds interesting, standardization, dealing with labor. It's a full picture.
Definitely. So where should we start? What was the landscape like when Taylor first started looking at shop management?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is Taylor saying that even in really competitive industries, the actual shop practices were, well, way behind what he thought was modern.
Yeah, he actually suggested, 2 or 3 decades behind? Even in big, important companies. It's kind of surprising.
And the common setup then was pretty basic, like one foreman juggling tons of workers.
Exactly. You had simple day work mostly. The foreman was stretched super thin, trying to oversee maybe dozens of people.
And pay was just flat rate, right?
Yeah.
Didn't matter if you were a superstar or just getting by.
Pretty much. A uniform wage. So no real incentive for efficiency. And Taylor made this great point. Just because a company was profitable
Didn't mean it was actually managed well.
Right. He argued whole industries could be just as inefficient as each other. So looking at dividends alone, it wasn't telling you much about good management.
That's a really sharp observation. And he also said good or bad management wasn't tied to one specific pay system, like piecework versus day work.
Absolutely. He was clear on that. You could find good and bad examples under any system. The system itself wasn't the magic bullet.
Okay, so if it wasn't the pay system or just profits, how did Taylor actually define good management? What was his core idea?
It's pretty direct, actually. He said management is knowing exactly what you want men to do and then seeing that they do it in the best and cheapest way.
Simple, clear, and focused on efficiency.
That's the foundation. Clarity, direction, and efficiency.
All right, so he clearly saw problems. What were the main things causing all this inefficiency, he observed?
Well, the sources point to a couple of big things causing waste. First, just a fundamental lack of knowledge. Like, employers and foremen often had genuinely no idea how long a job should actually take.
Ignorance on the management side.
And Taylor even suggests the workers themselves often didn't know their own potential capacity either. It was just guesswork.
Interesting. What was the second big factor?
The second thing was employers just weren't taking the initiative to find better systems or even understand the ones they had, and they weren't really valuing individual worker potential.
Okay, so management issues. And from the worker side?
That's where you get soldiering.
Soldiering. Yeah, Tom, military, but it means slowing down deliberately.
Exactly. He split it into 2 types. Natural soldiering. That's just, the human tendency to take it easy sometimes. We all do it.
Sure.
But the bigger issue was systematic soldiering. This was a conscious, planned effort by workers
Planned to do what exactly?
to keep the bosses in the dark about how much work could actually be done in a day.
Ah, okay. Why would they do that? What was the motivation?
Fear, mostly. Fear of rate cuts. Workers knew what the boss thought was a fair day's work for a fair day's pay.
Right.
If they suddenly started producing way more, showing they could work faster, what happens? The boss cuts the piece rate or demands more output for the same money.
Ah, so they'd work faster, prove it's possible, and then get paid less per piece, or have to work even harder just to make the same wage.
Precisely. So it was safer, strategically, to just keep the pace slow, make sure no job got done too quickly, protect those rates.
Self-preservation, basically. Makes sense. In a way, was there another reason?
Yeah, the other big one was peer pressure, social pressure from other workers.
The group dynamic.
Right. If some new guy or someone really energetic started working flat out.
The others would tell them to slow down.
Exactly. Sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly. They didn't want anyone setting a new, faster pace that everyone else would then be held to. It was about maintaining the status quo.
Wow. So a combination of fear of management and pressure from peers kept things slow.
That's what Taylor saw as the major drag on productivity.
Okay, so given this situation, what did Taylor think about the management systems that were trying to incentivize workers, like the Town Halsey plan?
He actually called the Town Halsey plan, where workers got a bonus for saving time, a great invention. He saw its merit.
Oh, so he liked it.
He acknowledged it helped reduce soldiering,
Yeah.
because it offered an incentive without that immediate threat of a rate cut if you worked faster. The workers shared in the savings.
Okay, so better than nothing. But he still wasn't fully sold.
No, not at all. His main beef was that these systems, Town Halsey included, even standard piecework, they were all based on flawed foundations.
Flawed.
The standard time they used was usually just based on guesswork, or maybe the record time someone once achieved it in. It wasn't scientifically determined.
So the starting point, the benchmark, was shaky. It might have been set by an exceptional worker or just luck.
Exactly. It wasn't based on a real understanding of what an average or even a first-class worker could consistently do.
And what was the result of using these unreliable benchmarks?
Well, Taylor argued it meant control over the work speed stayed mostly with the workers, leading to that slow pace we talked about.
Oh.
Or it just became a constant battle. Management trying to push for more, workers resisting, endless arguments and bargaining over rates and times, because nobody really knew what was fair or possible.
So the fundamental flaw across these different systems was this baseline of ignorance or even potential deception about work times.
That's the core of it. You can't optimize anything if you don't know what's actually possible.
Which leads us directly to Taylor's big solution.
Yeah.
Scientific management, powered by time study.
Right. This was his answer. Forget desk work, forget past records, use science.
And the core belief was?
That through systematic, objective time study, literally timing workers with a stopwatch, breaking down tasks, you could figure out exactly how much work a good worker, or even an average one, could reasonably do in a day.
Replacing opinion with data.
Precisely. And he wasn't just theorizing, he insisted he'd seen it work.
Yeah, he mentioned that workers would actually boost their output significantly under the right circumstances.
Yes, he was adamant. If you could assure workers of a substantial, permanent reward for higher output and remove that fear of rate cuts, they'd buy in. They'd maximize their effort.
And the Bethlehem steel example he gives is pretty powerful, isn't it? Walk us through that.
Oh, it's a classic. So picture this yard at Bethlehem Steel, huge crew, heavy manual labor handling pig iron, stuff like that.
Okay.
Paid a low, flat day rate, $1.15 today. Supervision was pretty loose. And no surprise, the work pace was slow. Lots of soldiering.
Standard situation back then, sounds like. So what changed?
First, they put a smart guy in charge, someone educated who could learn Taylor's methods. Then they started the time studies, meticulously.
How'd they do that?
They picked out some of the best workers, the first-class men, and they timed them with stopwatches, breaking down every single movement, lifting the pig iron, walking, dropping it, walking back. Every element timed separately.
Super detailed, breaking down simple actions into micro tasks.
Yeah. And from that data, they could figure out the best way to do the job and exactly how much time it should take, including rest periods.
Okay, so now they have scientifically derived standard times. What then?
They set up a piecework system based on this data. The key was setting the rate so a first-class worker, by following the method and working steadily, could earn about 60% more than the old day rate. The target was $1.85 a day.
A significant pay bump. Did it work? Did they earn it?
They did. The average earnings for those on piecework actually hit $1.88 a day, so slightly above the target.
Wow. And productivity. How much more work got done?
This is the amazing part. The workers under the new system handled, on average, 3.56 times more tons per day.
3.5 times. That's huge.
Huge. And Taylor stressed it wasn't just about brute force. It was the system, the method, the standardization, the incentives, all working together.
Were there other key parts to making that Bethlehem example work?
Yes, two other things he highlighted. First, daily feedback. Each worker got a slip showing exactly what they did the day before and what they earned.
Instant feedback. Powerful motivator.
Very. And second, individual measurement. Whenever possible, they measured and paid each worker individually, not as a group. Gang work, he found, just led to lower output and dissatisfaction. Everyone defaults to the pace of the slowest.
Makes sense. And the workers' attitudes changed too.
Completely, according to Taylor. He talks about a changed mental attitude, the resistance, the soldiering gone. They were focused on meeting the standard and earning the higher pay.
So that Bethlehem story really drives home his point about time study being the absolute key.
Absolutely. He called it by far the most important element. He even said a simple day work system, but based on knowledge from time studies, would beat most other incentive plans that just accepted soldering.
Okay, so based on all this experience, Taylor laid out some core management principles. What were they?
He boiled it down to four main things. First, a large daily task. Give every worker a specific, challenging, but achievable job for the day.
Clear expectations. What's second?
Second, standard conditions. You have to give the worker the right tools, the right setup, the right environment so they can actually achieve the task.
Makes sense. You can't expect speed with bad tools. Third,
High pay for success. If they hit the task, they get a significant pay increase, a real reward.
carrot.
And fourth, loss in case of failure. If they consistently don't hit the task, there needs to be a consequence, maybe lower pay, maybe eventually move to different work. The stick.
Task, standards, reward, consequence.
Wow.
Yeah. And didn't he mention a kind of fifth principle for more advanced places?
Yeah, he hinted that ideally you'd eventually set the task so high that only a truly first-class worker could consistently achieve it, really pushing the standard of performance.
That sounds intense. Now, putting these principles into practice across a whole shop, that required changes to how things were organized. Right?
Oh, definitely. A huge one was the need for a planning department.
Planning department, what did that involve?
This was central. It took the planning out of the foreman's hands and the workers' hands. This department would figure out the sequence of work, assign the specific tasks, create detailed instruction cards telling workers exactly how to do each step efficiently.
So the brain work moves from the shop floor to this central office.
Exactly. And they'd track progress, costs, everything. Let the workers focus purely on execution.
And this tied into standardization too. Not just methods, but tools.
Absolutely critical for Taylor. Complete standardization. Tools, machines, belts, materials, everything needed to be consistent and in optimal condition. He talked about a well-run tool room, proper maintenance. You need that reliable base for the tasks to be achievable.
This focus on specialization leads to another big idea of his, functional foremanship, which sounds like a big shakeup from the old single foreman model.
It was radical. Instead of one bias trying to know everything, Taylor said, let's split up the job
How?
into several specialized functional foremen, each one focused on just one aspect of overseeing the work.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Sure. You might have an instruction card clerk who handles the work orders, a time clerk for costs and pay, an inspector for quality, a gang boss focused just on setting up the job and helping workers get started, a speed boss making sure machines run right, a repair bots for maintenance, even a shop disciplinarian.
Wow, okay, so lots of bosses, but each one an expert in a narrow field.
That was the idea. Better expertise, better training for the workers in each specific area. He argued it made supervision way more effective.
And presumably you could apply his four principles, task, standards, pay, loss, to these specialized foremen too.
Exactly. Plus, he noted it allowed you to use workers who might be less skilled overall because they're getting very specific expert guidance on each part of the job. Might even be cheaper labor in some cases.
So standardization applied to supervision structure itself. It really was about standardizing everything.
Everything he could. Methods, tools, conditions, supervision. Uniformity was key, he thought, even if the standard wasn't theoretically perfect. Just having a clear, consistent standard was the priority. He mentioned the Taylor-White steel process as an example of huge gains from standardization.
Okay, let's shift slightly. How did Taylor approach the people side? Dealing with workers, unions, it wasn't just about mechanics and stopwatches, presumably.
He definitely addressed it. His core idea was to make the interests of the employer and employee mutual. How? High wages for the worker, low labor costs for the company, win-win in theory.
And how did he suggest introducing these potentially disruptive new systems?
Gradually, carefully. Start small, maybe with just 1 or 2 workers. Use them as an object lesson. Show everyone else, look, this person is following the system, doing the task, and earning way more money. Let the results speak for themselves.
Demonstrate the benefits rather than just imposing the change.
No.
What about unions? They must have been skeptical or even hostile.
Oh, sure. His approach there was methodical. First, use time study to prove the task is fair and achievable. Second, provide crystal clear, detailed instructions. Third, focus on winning over individual workers first, not negotiating with the union as a block initially.
And fourth?
Be ready to prove it. Have someone from management actually do the task to show it can be done in the time allotted. Build credibility.
He seemed pretty confident this would work.
He believed most workers were sensible. If they saw a system that demonstrably paid them better than union rates, and they trusted it was fair because of the scientific basis, they'd choose the higher pay.
And he thought this could actually reduce strikes.
Yeah, he felt strikes under his system were largely avoidable. If management built good relationships, treated people fairly, paid well for performance, and addressed grievances properly, the major causes of strikes would disappear. He claimed success in implementing his systems without strikes, even where unions were strong.
Interesting perspective. You mentioned the planning room earlier. Can we dive a bit deeper into its functions? It sounds like the real nerve center.
It absolutely was intended to be. You had roles like order of work or route clerks figuring out job sequences, instruction card men writing up those detailed procedures, time and cost clerks cracking everything, balance clerks managing inventory and materials flow.
So all the organizational heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Taking that burden off the shop floor.
Precisely. Centralizing the brain work, as he called it. Freeing up workers and shop-level foremen to focus on execution.
Did he see other potential roles for this planning department?
Yeah, he suggested it could handle a lot more. Managing the storeroom, running a messenger system, being the Central Employment Bureau carefully selecting workers, tracking their skills. Even things like shop discipline, maybe managing a mutual accident insurance plan, handling rush orders, and importantly, constantly looking for ways to improve the system and the plant itself.
So a really comprehensive control center for the whole operation.
That was the vision.
Now, implementing all of this sounds like a massive undertaking. You couldn't just flip a switch overnight.
No way. Taylor was very clear about that. It's a slow process. It takes time. It takes money. It needs careful planning and sequencing.
What was his advice on how to actually manage that transition?
Start small. Pick a few key areas or machines. Focus your effort there. Get it working perfectly. Achieve undeniable success. Use that as a showcase. Build confidence and understanding. Then expand gradually.
So resist the urge to do everything at once.
Definitely. He warned that for a while, you'd likely have the old system and the new system running side by side, which needs careful management.
And leadership was key.
Absolutely crucial. You needed someone competent and dedicated, driving the change. And equally important, you had to educate the owners, the directors, get their buy-in, make sure they understood the principles and the long-term commitment required.
It keeps coming back to that foundation. Unit time study. Why was breaking work down into tiny elements so fundamental for him?
Because that's how you get real data. Timing a whole complex job is unreliable. But timing the fundamental motions, lifting, turning, reaching, positioning you, can build up accurate times for any job composed of those elements.
Oh, like building blocks. Time the blocks, then you can calculate the time for any structure built with them.
Exactly. He realized this early on at Midvale Steel with his stopwatch studies. It's the only way, he felt, to get objective, transferable knowledge about work time.
Were there challenges in doing this time study effectively?
Sure. You had to be skilled at selecting the right workers to study the first-class ones. You needed good judgment to properly account for rest time, unavoidable delays. And just the skill of seeing a job and breaking it down into the right elementary units wasn't trivial. He also lamented the lack of, a big handbook of standard times back then.
Okay, so once you have these accurate times, you need a pay system. He talked about differential rate piecework and task work with the bonuses. How do they differ?
The differential rate was pretty stark. Set a standard, say, 10 widgets per day. If you make 10 or more, you get a high piece rate, say 35 cents per widget. If you make 9 or fewer, you get a much lower piece rate, maybe 25 cents per widget.
Ooh, a real cliff edge there. Big incentive to hit the standard.
Huge incentive. Then there was task work with the bonuses, which is often linked to Gaunt, one of Taylor's associates.
How did that work?
You still have a scientifically set task and time. If you complete the task within the time, you get your regular day's wages, plus a significant bonus, maybe 30–50% extra. If you don't complete the task, you still get your basic day wage.
Ah, so less punitive if you fall short. You lose the bonus, but not your base pay.
Exactly. Taylor saw it as maybe more flexible, better for transitional periods or for work that wasn't purely repetitive. Both systems drive performance, just with slightly different risk-reward profiles, but both depend entirely on that accurate, time-studied task standard.
Got it. Finally, amidst all this system and science, Taylor did talk about the human element, right? It wasn't all just mechanics.
No, he definitely stressed fairness. High wages for good work, yes, but also consistent discipline. He emphasized that employers needed to genuinely understand and respect their workers.
Communication mattered.
Yes, open communication, listening to grievances, treating people decently. He knew that even the best system wouldn't work if management wasn't capable, committed, and, well, fair in their dealings. The human relationship still mattered.
Okay, fantastic. We've really covered a huge amount of Taylor's thinking here. If you had to boil it down for our listener, what are the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive into his principles?
I'd say 3 main things jump out. 1, the shift to making management decisions based on data, specifically from time study, get the facts. 2, the intense focus on defining the task clearly and standardizing everything, methods, tools, conditions to make that task achievable.
And the third?
Third, the goal of aligning everyone's interests, trying to create a system where workers earn more by being more productive, which in turn makes the company more successful. High wages, low labor costs.
Right. And it's crucial, as you listen to remember, these ideas were groundbreaking, hugely influential, but also debated then and now. They've evolved a lot.
Absolutely. His work laid foundations for industrial engineering and modern management, but the pure application of his methods has often been criticized for potentially dehumanizing work if not balanced with other considerations. The context has changed.
So as you think about all this, consider how these ideas from over a century ago might still echo today. Where do you see remnants of Taylorism, good or bad, in modern workplaces? How do his principles stack up against current ideas about productivity, worker autonomy, engagement?
Yeah, which leads us to maybe the final thought to leave you with. In today's world, how do we strike that balance? How do we get the efficiency and productivity that Taylor was so focused on, but do it in a way that also respects human needs for autonomy, for motivation, for well-being?
What lessons or maybe warnings can we take from Taylor's deep dive as we try to figure that out?
Something to really chew on.
You've just been handed the master key to operational excellence from the man who engineered modern efficiency itself, Frederick Taylor. But listen closely, because this moment is critical. You now stand at a crossroads. You either act on this knowledge, or you risk becoming obsolete in a world that's accelerating past the undisciplined, the disorganized, and the untrained. Do not waste this insight. Hit subscribe right now to plug into the only channel delivering life-altering strategy like this. Smash that like button to declare your commitment to elite performance. And dive into the resources in the description, because that's where transformation begins. We're about to launch into our deep dive panel discussion, where we pull apart the tools, tactics, and mental frameworks that will put you at the top of your game. And then comes the moment of truth, the final knowledge check, your proving ground. This isn't just about memory, it's about mental weaponization. Only those serious about dominance through discipline will face it. Will you? Step up, take the test, and show the world you're not just informed, you're unstoppable.